Perfect. I don't know about you, Sandra, but I'm ready to start.
Okay, I'm ready to. Daniel, you're ready, I think.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm ready.
Awesome.
Okay. Let's start.
Daniel, if I remember correctly, you have attended the previous meeting as well, right? Our
Yes,
previous
yes,
discussion. Awesome. About
yes,
the
I was there.
good. How did you enjoy it?
Oh, I learned a lot. I was telling the chum chum that I got to realize that I'm actually a project manager in most projects I work on.
Mhm.
Yes, due to the skill set you mentioned. And then I also learned that empathy is a big game in
Okay.
project management. Yes, so I've been incorporating that in recent project I'm working on. Then I'm just checking out the difference to see how far it's going.
Good. Good. No,
Yeah.
that's awesome, and I'm happy to help. And whenever you have any
Um,
kind of questions you want to address, maybe some specifics. I don't know a whole lot myself. I'm not a certified lecturer or anything like that. I'm just a guy
yeah.
who worked in project management for a couple years, and I just have a passion for sharing the information and then
Right.
really talking about it. So even if you
Yeah.
see any kind of holes, and maybe I can expand a little bit more on this or that, any kind of suggestions, please,
All right.
please
All
do.
right.
Any kind of comments are very, very welcome.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. So let's get rolling. The topic of today's presentation is going to be soft skills for project managers, and I wanted to thank Sandra for putting on this event and inviting the folks and setting up the Zoom meeting and doing all things to make this presentation possible. We are going to discuss what are these soft skills. We'll look at the definitions, at some examples, and we'll see what emotional intelligence is in relation to soft skills, which may or may not be somewhat of a newish term that it came about a few years back, but is now being actively used in the work industry. Then out of all those examples, we will highlight top 5 skills, soft skills for project managers. We're going to wrap it up with a short summary and open the floor up for questions. So what are soft skills? Soft skills, it's kind of hard to explain, and there's a good reason for it. Soft skills, unlike hard skills, now let's talk about hard skills first. So soft skills are quite the opposite of hard skills. Hard skills are something like woodworking, picking up a piece of wood, trimming off the excess material, and boom, you have a figurine. Can also be, if you are a software engineer, your hard skill would be proficiency in programming languages or coding. And if you're a delivery driver, well, your hard skill would be driving. But soft skills are also known as people skills. And it's really your ability to talk to other folks around you, be it in the work setting, professional, personal environment, the ability to hear someone out, understand how the room responds to your message, and then act on it accordingly. Maybe you need to change your language. Maybe you need to avoid discussing certain topics. And the highlighted terms here are interact effectively and harmoniously. And well, what is interact effectively? Interacting effectively means that not only are you speaking to the person and just trying to tell them what it is that you want to tell them, you're also saying it in a manner that that person is most likely to understand and accept at least the information. They may agree with it, they may disagree with it, but the fact that you found the words to express yourself in such a way that speaks to that person, that is huge. And that is what soft skills are all about. And the second thing, harmoniously, staying in harmony while expressing yourself is also extremely important. You shouldn't be pressuring someone into decision. Ideally, you should arrive to something organic, something where both of you find the middle ground. And that's where the harmony comes into play. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the examples of soft skill. What are they? First and foremost, and I believe the most important for project managers and really everyone who is anyone, is your ability to communicate. The ability to understand what it is that you know, to understand who it is that you are trying to send the message to, shape the information in the correct form, and then pass it on to those people. Then, once you pass it on to them, you should be open to feedback. Expect that there will be some sort of reaction, positive or negative. You take your message, you package it up for people, for your audience to understand it best. You pass it on to them. They look at it, they process it, they understand what they feel and how they feel, and then they send you back their response. And the best way to do that is by trying to master your communication skills. And we can have 10, probably even more than that, separate discussions on just the communication and project management. But if there's one key point, is that as a project manager, you should be able, first, you need to understand what it is that you know. All the information about your project and about things that you do, who do you support, who are you responsible to. Then you need to understand your audience. And with those two key fundamental knowledges, you should shape your information and then pass it, onto the folks, and then process the feedback. And then another very important soft skill is, of course, leadership. Again, you know what you know. You kind of think that you know what your audience wants to hear. Well, how do you inspire and motivate them to go and do good work? How do you create the positive and productive work environment? That is where leadership skill comes in handy. Because no group is alike. I had a pleasure of working with technicians, with software engineers, with education professionals, and folks from many other fields. And if I use the same vocabulary, it would be extremely difficult to convey the message. So I had to adapt as a project manager, and I had to immerse myself in their culture for a little bit to understand what words can they relate to the best. Well, you tell someone that no, I'm not going to get deep down into terminology, but basically, if you use a software slang with someone who's from the education field and have no software background, your message is going to be lost on them, and vice versa. So extremely important to know. You can only inspire if you really have a good understanding of the culture and, of course, motivate. Then another important soft skill is problem solving. Best way to do that, 3 things. When you come across any new task, you look at it and you see, okay, well, what it is that the task is, or an issue. Once you identified it, once you're able to describe it in a sufficient manner for you to understand and for your team to understand, then you go and you identify, okay, well, we know that this is the problem. How can we solve it? And then you pick one of those optional solutions, whichever one seems to jive most with your team, and then you implement the solution which you believe is the most effective. To give you a good example, a while back I was working on a construction project, and we had to connect electricity to the new building. building was already built. Someone approved all of that without reviewing electrical drawings. And then turned out that they cannot connect to the nearby power line because it would create system overload and basically melt the wires. So we had to identify the issue. The issue was that the power line next to the building was already overloaded. There was no room to connect the new building to. And then we analyzed potential solutions. Well, what can we do instead? We can provide alternative source of power, like a separate generator for that building. We can put in some solar panels, or we can look at other power lines in the area and see which ones are available, which ones still have some capacity to carry the load of the new building. Out of all those three options, the most feasible one ended up being number 3. We found a power line that wasn't used in years. It just kind of sat there just in case for emergency purposes. And we identified that solution, and then we implemented it by allowing them to tie into the power line that wasn't even looked at during the design. So that is problem solving, which may sound a little bit trivial, especially for those who have to problem solve in their daily activities, but problem solving is indeed a soft skill. Depending on how repetitive your work is, sometimes problem solving can become a hard skill. If you're facing same problems day in and day out, like an engineering design, or you're going through the development, or book editing, right? There are some standards. There's some kind of literature, something that you can fall on where you can mechanically follow the steps, answer the right questions. It's like a decision matrix. If this, then that. If not, then this. But in day-to-day interactions, and when it comes to soft skills, here problem solving is talking a lot. It is used in reference of, okay, I just had a presentation. I just talked to everyone about soft skills, but the audience is silent. Why is that? I don't know much about every attendee's background, so I cannot even fathom why wouldn't anyone ask any questions. So I need to analyze potential solutions. Maybe if my goal is for you guys ask questions, maybe I need to set up a poll. Maybe I need to send out a survey after the presentation. Maybe audience is just not comfortable unmuting their mics and asking questions. And then Sandra and I would collaborate and would implement one of those options. So this non-trivial desire to seek solution to the problem is problem-solving skill as a soft skill. And of course, what is super important to everyone who wants to be an effective project manager is time management. To manage the time effectively, you need to not only know what are the tasks that you have, you also need to understand what priority are they set in. Not all projects follow the same, beautiful book example of after A, you start task B. After you're done with B, you start task C. Most projects are usually like interconnected tree roots that intertwine and intersect in different places. And you can, in fact, start task D as soon as you start task A, but then you have to wait to finish task D only after task C is fully complete, because D is, for example, testing and A is prototype building. There is the ability to prioritize, set the deadlines, and keeping your team on track is crucial. And that's why time management ended up here. In many industries, depending on how mature your company is, if you are working for a fairly young company that was out in the market 5 to 10 years, and they're not just a franchise of a larger brand, they are, let's say it's an entrepreneurial cell. They just started, they just got funding, and these are not experienced professionals that carry some of their professional knowledge. If it's a group of people that is still figuring it out, time management and communication, those two things, it'll be a deal breaker between winning in the industry or watching the company burn in fire. Because if you can prioritize things and you can set least important on the back burner, prioritize critical tasks, you're going to be okay if you do what you're promised. And of course, if you fail to do so, your ability to convey that to your subordinates, to your supervisors, and to your peers will also be extremely important. Now, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about emotional intelligence as it relates to soft skills. Emotional intelligence is, I would say, a philosophy, a way of thinking that allows you to not only act, but also process things that you see around yourself. It allows you recognize, understand, and really see what it is that others are doing, their emotions. And of course, not only your own as well as the emotions of others. Emotional intelligence is, I think, that is just to give you an idea, the higher the level is of your emotional intelligence, the closer you are to being good at using your soft skills. And if soft skills are your tools, so communication, problem solving, time management, and whichever one was the fourth, then EI or emotional intelligence is your ability, your skill, your proficiency in using your soft skills. Because you can have communication skills, but how proficient really are you? And this is something that field of emotional intelligence concerns itself with. How do you develop your communication skills? How do you develop problem solving as a soft skill? Um, it is a very interesting field and also warrants a whole separate discussion. And if you're ever curious, I'll be more than happy to talk about that. So with that in mind, after reviewing some examples of soft skills and trying to wrangle in emotional intelligence to kind of give you the tools and then the ways to use them, let's look at what are the top 5 soft skills for a project manager. Actually, if you don't mind, Daniel, only if you're comfortable, can you please give me a good guess? What do you think will be number 1 soft skill for a project manager?
Hmm.
Communication.
Yes, well. I want to say communication. I want to say a good time management. It's on good time
Bingo.
management.
Communication.
What's the question?
Very nice. Excellent. Excellent. It
Okay.
is.
What is the communication?
All right.
Absolutely yes. 100% hands down. And I'm not afraid to repeat myself. And I will continue doing that because this is the essence of project management. Your ability to look around, see what's going on, process it in your mind, spill it out on paper, voice notes, whatever you use to record information, spreadsheets. Project management transcends through very different fields, and people use different tools to do that. Process that information and then convey it to others in such way that they understand. That's what project managers do. And as the time goes, they get better and better at it, and it becomes more and more natural to them. And it's definitely something that not everyone is born with, but something that absolutely everyone can master and improve on as the time goes. I am a firm believer that any skill can be cultivated, soft skills as well as hard skills. It's just a matter of how hard do you need to work on it. If you grew up in a family where everyone is outgoing and talkative and you have 10 siblings, odds are you're probably going to be a little bit better at it. Whereas if you're kind of like me, who was only child and didn't have a ton of friends growing up, I had classmates, but not really friends. I struggled a lot expressing how I feel, what it is that I see. It made sense to me. It made sense to the people that were directly in my circle of communication, but to others, it it was strange. But I recognized my weakness as soon as I stepped into project management role in the communication field, and I spent quite a few years working on trying to improve it. And and it's, you know what? It not only changed my the success in my professional field, it also changed my personal life quite a bit. I've learned to listen to my wife's requests in a slightly different manner than I did before. Learned to be more patient with my children, and all of that because I was really looking up on how do I improve my communication skills. So thank you, Daniel. And at no surprise to anyone, number 2 is going to be on the top 5 skills for project managers. I placed communication. And same on number 3. Because if you or your colleague or your boss or your subordinates do not prioritize communication on your team, no matter how good of a technical acumen, no matter how well standardized your organization is, or your team or your group, it will be extremely difficult to attain good measurable results. And it will be very hard to create this really positive and motivating work environment. I'm not saying that everyone should be standing in a circle, holding hands, singing songs during every lunch break. I saw companies that do that. I worked for a company that did that. It was based out of Singapore. It was a very, very unusual experience, but that was just the culture there, and it was neat. It was different, but just being able to tell others what it is that you know in a way for them to understand. That is huge. Number 4 goes to ability to prioritize tasks, because the more you see, the more information you accrue, the larger your knowledge becomes. You're storing lots of different facts and figures inside of your mind, in your database, on your voice notes, what have you, and it can become overwhelming. Kind of like when you get a brand new computer and your desktop is pristine and clean, and there's only like 4 little icons on it, and 2 years later, the whole screen is taken up with files. Well, and some people do great at that. That's that they just never create folders. Just all of their files are on the desktop. I am the exact opposite way, that I have to have a structure. So about once every 6 months, I go through my records and I reprioritize stuff, shuffle them around, and I just basically reorganize my database. So this ability to prioritize tasks, and it was shown in many, many studies, many different companies, really, really helps you see what it is that's number 1, what's number 2, number 3, and what can we not worry about at all, at least for right now until we free up some time. It is critical. It is very important, because if you try to tell someone everything that you know, they will be overwhelmed. And unless you're able to tell them this is number 1 thing that I need from you, and then this is number 2, and this is number 3, in that exact order, it will be difficult for them to meet your expectations. And it can create grounds for miscommunication. And as a result, loss of productivity, upset feelings, and I hope not, but sometimes, yeah, bad conflict that can happen. Just to wrap it up and put a bow on it, and to absolutely solidify, paint red, highlight, bold it, burn it in the back of everyone's memory. Number 5 on the top 5 soft skills for project manager is going to be Daniel's favorite, communication. Because this is the essence of the project management philosophy. All right, now let's look at some highlights of what we discussed today. I figured out by now that soft skills is not exactly the ability to drive a car or to write a software code or to put together organized events. It's really your ability to interact with others in a productive and positive manner. Speaking their language, conveying enough information not to overwhelm them, but to let them know what it is that you want them to know, be it tasks for work, maybe it's expectations in the new work relationship. I don't know, whatever it is that you come across. Or maybe what I had to do on multiple occasions is why I have not met a particular deadline, talking to my clients and my boss about it. And the more I was saying it in a way that's more understandable to them, the more comfortable I became with being 100% honest, not trying to sugarcoat anything, and at the same time, not being rude about it. I would say yes, I indeed failed to update the timesheets because I forgot. I'm sorry. Or, you know, many other things with regular project tasks. So, look at that. Again, communication is still key. It is the most important soft skill that not only project manager, I think communication is nowadays is more applicable to a lot more professions than it did way back when. Because as interesting and creative our jobs are now compared to pre-industrial age, so 1500s, now we need to now we need to be able even more to express what it is that we do and what we expect others to do to support us than in the past, because so many fields are overlapped and interconnected. Without one, there's not going to be another. If you're building a house and a person mixing concrete for the foundation didn't use the right ratio, well, once the walls are put up and the roof and all that weight is added, the foundation will sink. So you need to let them know clearly, what do you expect out of them, what kind of mixture, and the specifications for it. If the electrician is not going to wire the house correctly and he'll give only one outlet and then nothing else, well, what that house may or may not be inhabitable for the people that asked them to build the house. So communication really, really is, and I think will remain priority in our field. And of course, the better your soft skills are, the more likely people would want to work with you, as opposed to with someone who is not so good at utilizing their soft skills. And from what I have seen, it is much, much easier for people with good soft skills to advance into the leadership positions. Because when someone who is more experienced than you, let's say your current manager, sees that you're able to see the task in front of you and to talk to your subordinates and to your peers about what it is that needs to be done and in which order, can prioritize, delegate, and then you can assess their performance and effectively report it back to the leader. Obviously, they're going to want someone to take their place eventually. So people with good soft skills are, and it was shown again in many studies, that they're the prime candidates for leadership positions on the job. And of course, the ones that are hurting on their soft skills, I would absolutely encourage to seek as much self-improvement as possible, because it will help you not only in the professional, but also on the personal front in your communication with your relatives, your neighbors, and your friends as well, people from your common groups of interest. It is a very, very, I should say, nebulous field. There's a lot of literature on it, a lot of different courses, and from what I found, a lot of these courses kind of pick one thing and they focus on it a lot. But there are a few and then the courses that pick many things, they don't go deep enough for you to understand. So try playing with it. Pick communication as a project manager, just a recommendation, not forcing anyone into it, and learn as much as you can about it. Then you've learned enough about communication, go to time management. Learn about time management and how to prioritize tasks. I believe Peter Drucker, one of the more famous authors in project management world, has a few good books on it. One of them is The Effective Executive. Really, really good book on task prioritization and time management. And then and play around and see what works best for you and what doesn't. But that was really it for my presentation today. Thank you for holding off your questions until the end. I saw a couple of chat bubbles pop up while I was presenting, but I didn't want to get distracted. I wanted to stay on track. So, Sandra, if you could please look into those messages and we can go over them. Unless someone has a question in the audience. Basically, Sandra, back to you.
Back to section. Thank you for explaining it very detailed. You explained it. Even a 2-year would probably understand perfectly all you said this night. So thank you very much for that.
My pleasure.
Things you saw pop up were not questions actually, just nothing serious, just communicate, the importance of communication. Yeah.
I just saw that Daniel has a question.
Drop it in the chat section, or you can unmute yourself and ask if you're comfortable with doing
Please.
that. Yeah. Yes, Dan.
Okay. All right. So my question is on, as a project manager, while managing projects, if it doesn't effectively work out, using soft skill, good communication, and all of that, how can one effectively communicate either certain ideas or strategies or time constraint that needs to be adhered to effectively?
No, that's a great question, Daniel. Thank you for that. It is something that I had to deal with in my career. Just about a few years ago when I had a boss who I don't blame him for that. That's just his personality. He had zero soft skills whatsoever. He never discussed his personal life. He wouldn't even ask how his everyone day is. He was focused on three things: task, performance, progress. Done. Nothing else. No discussions about the weather. No hello, how are you? Submit me this by then. And I thought, oh man, he's really difficult to get along with. And I weighed two options. Option number one, because it really frustrated me and it frustrated a lot of other people to communicate with him, because he wouldn't hesitate to bring up failures, but he would almost never commend anyone for good performance. So option number one, you can always leave. You can always say, I'm done. I tried. This is not working out. And instead of continuing to torture myself, I'm just going to go find a different job. Bye. Option number two, you can look really deep down inside of that person's mind and soul the best way you can and find what it is that they value the most. With my boss, it was pretty easy. He valued those three things the most. Task, goodness, but whichever one second measure was, and third one is the progress, task performance and progress. So I structured all of my reports, every email that I sent to them, every instant message, every kind of spreadsheet, in these three categories. And it ended up working out very well. Like, I actually started communicating. The number of emails between him and I have increased. He got moved to a different position later on, but it's really about understanding the language that your counterpart is speaking. And that is huge. If soft skills are not working out, that's not the end of the story. But again, you can walk away, or you can spend extra time and effort understanding what is the language that your counterpart speaks, and how to frame your knowledge to actively convey it to your boss, peer, or subordinate. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Chum Chum, do you want to add something?
I will add, let's take the questions finished. Some people have questions, so I'm going to add later. Okay, so Joshua Caleb said he has a question. So Joshua, please, you can ask your question.
We still have Joshua here.
Joshua, can you hear me?
I don't
Hear me
see
now.
anyone. Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My question goes this way. In a setting or in an organization where you as a project manager, you are not like close to your subordinate or to your boss. Probably it's a visual something, not physical. How do you try to enhance or manage your communication skill if you say that communication is very, very important? It's a very, very important soft skill. And also, what if language barriers comes in? How do you manage to wrap up all of that?
Okay, and what was the last part? You asked, how do I manage to? And then they got a little noisy on my end. Can you please repeat that last part of your question?
Okay, I said like what if language barrier is then an issue? How do you manage to wrap it up?
Great question. I worked on the all virtual team for about 2 years. It was one of my many projects that I was managing. And just like you were saying, very distant from the client, very distant from the team. Everyone was distributed different time zones. We didn't have the language barrier in that team, but I had that with other teams. So I will address language barriers separately. First, when you work on the team and you're really kind of removed from others, it's just not in company culture to get together, call each other randomly and be like, hey, how's your dog doing? I heard you got a new puppy, blah, blah, blah. Talking about personal issues. The best way to communicate in that setting, and it really works out every time. You have to be more vocal about what it is that you do. If everyone knows on the schedule, you're a project manager, and let's say you have 2 people working for you. First person is doing task A, second person is doing task B, and you know that they're competent and you know that they will be done. With task A will be complete by July 1st and task B will be complete by July 2nd. So what do you do between now and task completion is what will separate you as someone with good soft skills versus someone who can stand back and say, yes, I need to continue improving on it. And what it is that you can do is you can follow up with the team, not only asking about the progress, hey, where are you with this task, but really researching what it is that they do, what are the steps that they need to take to complete task A, and then ask questions along the way. Just be honest. Hey, I really don't know what it is that it takes to go from the beginning to the completion of task A, but I looked it up and apparently you need to do steps 1, 2, and 3. Well, on step number 3, I think that this may be a little bit challenging. Is there anything else that I can do to support you on step 3? What other steps along the way do you see being very challenging? Or my favorite question, what do you see? And I always ask that in the beginning. What can you see will be a showstopper? What is one thing that can derail the whole progress of the task execution? And people usually love sharing their stories about, oh yeah, no, this one particular stuff, unless you take care of it, nothing else is going to work out, and it's very important. And then they tell you how much time they spend on it. So then you can go in and ask, well, okay, how do you prioritize which method of, let's say, troubleshooting do you use to make sure that this vital step 3 gets completed, and so on. Talk to them about the task that they do. Those intermediate steps that they have to go through before completing it. Do that with person working on task A, do that with person working on task B, and by the time they finish it, you will have a broader understanding of their professional skills, if they're comfortable talking to you or not. But really, 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 if personal topics are off limits for whatever reason, talk to them about work. Talk to them a lot. Ask questions about the steps along the way. Not necessarily did you finish it, but what do you think it takes to complete step 2? And is step 3 indeed vital? Try asking open-ended questions. Let them get back to you with an answer. And the similar approach goes with language barrier folks. I currently work with a gentleman who is exceptionally well at speaking Vietnamese, but his English is not so great. So he is subject matter expert. He's the only gentleman on my team who knows his system inside and out. And we needed to produce a document that shows how does the system work. Of course, whenever I talk to him, I would use simpler words, less complicated. I would try to enunciate more. And at the end of the day, when we really needed to produce the document, I was like, Tuan, write it in your native language. We will use Google Translate, and then we will correct the grammar as we go using some online grammar correcting tools. That's not a problem. I always encourage people to use their existing vocabulary. Maybe we didn't have to make that document overly complex. Maybe we could have made it a lot easier with just a few words that he knew. But because we had that time, he actually typed it up in Vietnamese. We used Google Translate. It gave us somewhat of a less abridged English version with a bunch of random strange words because it's far from perfect. And then I corrected it a little bit, and then I sent it to a technical writer who was very well versed in creating technical documentation. They corrected it. It ended up becoming a standard in my organization. So certainly you have to work with what you got and really, really, really try to understand what it is that people want to talk about, because everyone wants to feel important. And when you ask people questions about what they do, how they do it, and why they do it, they feel important. And that makes them want to communicate more with you in return. So I hope that answered your question. Caleb.
Yeah, did he answer your question properly, Joshua?
Yeah, sure you did. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so this question I have here is how do you prioritize tasks and manage dependencies in a project?
Well, it's kind of a broad question, but if I'll give a short answer and a long answer. Short answer, critical path. You build your project schedule, you identify your Slack states of completion, what must happen. But before another task, if we're building a house, you have to pour concrete before you put up the walls. There's no questions asked. If you need to write a book, you need to start with a draft before you go into editing. So whatever is the sequence of those main events where you can wait the least between event A and event B, that's your critical path. So follow that, and that would be my prioritization. And answers come naturally as you start writing out tasks that need to happen from the beginning of project to the completion. And then a somewhat of a longer answer on how to prioritize tasks and manage dependencies is, well, your project plan may be ideal. You may have this perfect graph with a critical path that tells you you need to complete tasks A, B, C, E, G, and then D and F and all these lateral ones, they can wait. But then you hand the schedule to your team. And you know that your team is actually really great at executing these lateral tasks, but your critical ones are the ones that are hurting. What do you do then? Then you start adding more time on executing each of these tasks. And while you're writing project schedule, you intentionally extend the deadline, push it as far as you can, knowing that your team will struggle with these particular tasks because they don't have enough expertise, or maybe because it's the most uncertain task. There can be 101 reasons why they may or may not complete it on time, but really try to give them that buffer. And if they finish it ahead of time, great, you can move on to the next one. But the only real way to understand what they're probably struggling with the most, what are the most difficult tasks, is by spending enough time with them and clearly communicating your expectations and looking back at the history and seeing what went well, what didn't go so well. And that will kind of point you in the direction of, okay, well, maybe, just maybe, task D is not as critical as this lateral task. Maybe this needs to be made a core focus uh, and that this one needs to become lateral. And I kind of wanted to have a more technical presentation and schedule building, hopefully addressing how to manage dependencies with examples as opposed to waving my hands and trying to use words. But you really need to know how your team performs, and that will help you. That will really, really help you manage those dependencies on a project.
Okay, he has another question. Secondly, what are some common communication
Some common communication pitfalls to avoid. Oh, I would say that the one that I saw derailed a lot of good intentions and a lot of good projects, even the ideas before they turn into projects, was making assumptions. You start assuming that I just finished a presentation and absolutely everyone here loved what I had to say. Great, I don't have to change anything. I will stick to the same slide deck. I will not change the way I talk. I will, and so on and so forth. And then I continue creating similar presentations in a similar manner, presenting in the same way. Well, if you start assuming things, eventually, and your assumptions are incorrect, then eventually you're less and less people are going to start showing up because you assume that everyone enjoyed it, but the reality is not so much, that there is room for improvement. So making assumptions before, instead of going back and asking your audience or maybe seeking feedback after the session, one-on-one. Different people work very differently. Someone is very comfortable unmuting and talking on the microphone, and someone really needs the one-on-one interaction, and maybe through instant messaging, not necessarily, talking or voice messaging. So making assumptions, I think, is the biggest communication pitfall. If in doubt, go and ask. Be honest. Admit to people, I really couldn't understand if my presentation made sense to you, or if my schedule, my intent, my scheduling, my funding profile, the standard that I came up with made sense to you. Please tell me more. I am willing to listen, accept any kind of criticism, and just let people talk it. You help them feel important, seek their expertise, and I think the good things will start coming your way.
Oh, but I actually enjoy saying one or two, like last section. Anyways, I'm just going to add one or two things. The overall way to avoid any pitfall in any project at all, whether as a manager or a owner of a project, is to every single team member and stakeholder understands the project scope, even before you go into the project. Define the goals and the objective. Now, every single person, the stakeholders, the team members, the project owners, the project sponsors, every single person involved in this project understands this. You tell them, okay, this is the scope of the project. This is how long it's going to take. This is how we are going to send the deliverables. This is how we are going to have our stand-up meetings. These are the potential risks that might come up and all of that. If you're able to explain this properly to everybody involved in a project, I think you avoid overall most of the project pitfalls in a project. Joe, don't you agree?
Yes, 100%. You need to get people on the same page. And the best way to do that is to improve your communication skills. To where if someone values numbers over text, and I've seen that before, I showed a table with tasks and completion dates to the person. And they looked at me and they're like, what does this mean? I said, well, here's the beginning, here's the intermediate tasks, and this is the end. And they told me, I don't understand without context. I was like, how do you not understand the simple table? So I went, I sat back down and I thought about it. I was like, maybe I need to write it in a text. So I rewrote it as a paragraph. It ended up being a page-long explanation of the schedule, presented it to the person. They got it. They read that page probably 10 times faster than I ever could read it. And they're like, no, yes, this makes 100 times more sense. So really figuring out how it is that other people perceive information and then giving them everything that they need to know. Just like Sandra said, what needs to be done, what are the deadlines, and who are the key stakeholders? Absolutely.
Yeah, Daniel, you asked me to talk, so I'm going to say. So one other thing one soft skill that came to my mind while Joe was teaching. Yeah, I think the ability to be able to make decision. So last week I spoke about being empathetic, but then just as Joe said, you have to be careful. So you're a project manager. As much as you want to please everyone, not please them, as much as you want to make them comfortable, don't forget that decisions that might not even they might not enjoy or like it, but it's for the betterment of the project. Yeah, so you need to be able to make decisions, and that is a very tough thing to do because every single person has his or her own opinion. And that's why I said you need to explain the project scope, objective, and goals. So if your team members understand the goals and the objective properly, when you are having your meetings, you'll be on the same page, most likely than when they do not understand it. Yeah.
Well said.
You don't understand it.
Sorry, I was just trying to say, it didn't mean to interrupt you. Just going to compliment your way of expressing the importance of getting everyone on the same page. And yes, making tough decisions, no matter how much you like someone on the team or how much they might even be related to you. Had a few cases where we had couples working on projects and one of them wasn't performing quite as well, and it was important for one family member to tell another, hey, look, really slacking on this. We need to work on that. Of course, there's different ways to do that. But that is when understanding what the language of your audience is, not just phonetic language, and when we speak, but more so emotionally. how do they perceive information, in which way? The tables or the text? Is it straight to the point like my previous boss, where it's only 3 things? Or is it someone who also wants to tell you about their new puppy that they got and the collection of cars that they own and maybe the new house that they're trying to build? So, absolutely.
Yes, the last thing I would want to say, maybe not the last, but then please, as managers, as project managers, please do not overburden your team members. You cannot they might have more than one project they are working on at the moment. So you need to be careful not to overburden them, because if you do, there is no way they will deliver on time. You need to be careful not to give them more than what they can handle. Everybody has his or her limits. No matter how good you are, there is somewhere where you get exhausted and you are, I cannot. So you need to know that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then the last thing I would want to say is as a project manager, one is the ability to build trust among your team members and your stakeholders. Yeah, they should be able to trust you. They should be able to because if I do not trust you personally, if I do not trust you, I cannot I do not trust you, I cannot allow you lead me. I think that's a
Yeah.
better way to say it.
Yeah.
Yes. So you should be able to build trust in them. You must not necessarily say it. You can build trust from your communication. That's why Joe said communication is 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Yes.
Important.
Absolutely.
If your team members even see the way you communicate, they will just trust you, because if you and you show them that you understand what they are going through, or what's happening, not forgetting that they team members, because without them there will be no project. So yeah, so trust you, make your team members love you. They must not love you, but trust is important. I don't know about love, but I think
Yes.
trust is extremely important.
And love comes in many different forms. I'd say respect is also a form of love. And of course, it depends on the definition, but trust is hard to come by and absolutely can only be earned through time. Just because you're appointed to be their project manager, I'm sorry, unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. They may execute the tasks that you ask them to execute because it comes with your position, but do they really trust you along the way? That is a much harder question. And when you understand that trust is usually earned over time, you should expect that people will question some of your decisions and recommendations when you are a newly appointed leader. And that's one of the challenges that we constantly have to go through as project managers, because as soon as the project is over, in many cases, team is disbanded. And then next project comes along and you're with new people and that you never met before. And you have to work with now to push this endeavor for however many months or years. And this can certainly make things more challenging. And yeah, but that's why we signed up to do what we do, right? As project managers.
Me, so I'm just going to bring it here. So someone said that why project managers, why he has worked with 1 or 2 projects, saying to buy time for themselves or for their selfish reason is one day missed by the, okay, let's assume probably you gave the client or whoever is supposed to go through your documents, and the person did not send it on time, and you are like, one day missed by you
Mhm.
for the project manager. So I don't know, do you want to say something about that? Because from that person's perspective, we're just being selfish. Why are we going to say if the client missed one day, it does all of that? Yeah, so do you want to say something about that?
Standard, you were breaking up a lot, and I missed a lot of what you said, and I think it's on my end because of the internet. Uh, can you please repeat what the question was? Because I was trying to catch the message really hard, but I couldn't. Sorry.
Okay, it's fine, it's fine. So let me just, okay. Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so someone said that there is a particular phrase that project managers use that
Uh-huh.
or to buy ourselves more time when we feel that we will not meet a particular deadline,
Yeah.
or for a selfish reason. He said that most project managers say this. One day missed by a client does not equal managers and team.
Okay. I heard one day missed by a client does not equate, and then it dropped off. It doesn't equate what?
And they make up by the project manager and the team members.
Yeah. So that is a challenging question, but I should say indeed, a one day for a person versus one day for a team are two drastically different things. And also to the client, whenever, at least in things that I've worked on in the past, we usually highlight that in the contract. If we all agree on the date, we agree on the cost of the project and the team task deliverables. And if we're late at our fault, not because client wanted to change something, but our company has failed to do something, we ran into some challenges and we could not agree on extending the deadline. If we are late, it will come at a certain cost. A certain amount of money will get taken out of the contract. And I think that agreeing to that kind of predicament early in the contract puts additional burden on the company that executes it, but it also clears out a lot of air and expectations between the client and the team. Everyone knows this is it. This is the end. And if you know that you're not going to make the deadline, warn everyone who's anyone in advance. You as a project manager, you or whoever is the person keeping track of schedule, let everyone know. The team that we're running behind, let the client know. Be brave, be honest, explain to them. Running into some challenges, it is not likely that we will finish on time. I want to be upfront and honest, and I'm telling you right now that this is a problem. Let's work on this together. Let's find some common ground solution. Sometimes clients can help you out, not necessarily with resources as much as with advice or defining the scope of the project a little bit better. And because going back and forth in defining the functionality of a final product is what eats up a lot of time on the project. Reviews and change notices. So the more you can reduce that, the less likely you will be to miss the deadline at the end. But that is only usually possible when you work in somewhat of a streamlined field, where your projects produce somewhat analogous products at the end, as opposed to it's different every single time. And it's a lot harder to pinpoint things like that. But I hope it at least went in somewhat of a direction to help answer that question.
Yeah, it did. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So the network is really bad. I think from my end too, it's really bad. I was struggling to hear you along the line.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, but it's fine. I got you. I understood what you were saying.
Good.
So then I don't know. Do you have any other question before we wrap up today's section?
Oh, none for now. None for me.
Okay. Okay. So his network too is bad. But can you still hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yes, I can
Either
hear you.
way. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. An hour and 13 minutes of raw value. Very more soft skills to add to the one he learned last week. Very much. I'm going to get the recording. I think I'll see if I can get it this night or tomorrow. Yeah,
Yeah, if you
tomorrow,
can
probably
send
before
me a
the end of
link
today.
or something so I can download it later on. But I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. And I noticed a few folks drop off, probably because they had plans at the top of the hour. So
Yeah. Thank you very much, Joe. Thank
my
you for
pleasure.
sharing with us from your this network. Thank you very much. The network is bad.
Hmm. Yeah, it happens, but that's what we do. We ask the same question 17 times until we get the straight answer. That's the essence of project management. And I wanted to thank Daniel so much for the great questions, and Lawrence for sticking around. Appreciate that. And Sandra, of course, thank you so much for putting this together.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Joe. I think at this point we call it. So from our end, we'll tell you good night, but you still have a lot of hours before you go to bed. Meanwhile, from our end, we'll be going
Yes,
to
I
bed
do.
in less than, depending on how early you sleep, though.
Yeah. No, I usually sleep very little. The life is too exciting to spend it in bed, but people try to convince me otherwise.
Yeah, I have a long day tomorrow, so I'm going to sleep early. Yeah, thank you very much, Joe. Thank you, Joe, Lawrence, and thank. So I'll send the reviews to you.
Okay. Yeah,
That thing.
that sounds good, and I'm really hoping to do a similar session next week.
Thank you very much. Okay, good night. See you later,
Alrighty.
Joe. No, good night.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.